Welcome to the Veterinary Financial Podcast, where we discuss financial freedom and professional success. I'm Meredith Jones, a veterinarian and financial planner for vets. Today, I want to talk about what's happening right now with federal student loans because we are officially past the July 1st transition date, and a lot of borrowers are confused, stressed, and trying to make big decisions really quickly. The good news is that most veterinarians with student loans do not need to panic today. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been seeing a lot of the same issues and questions come up over and over again. So I wanted to record a practical update of what we're seeing and what borrowers should know moving forward. One of the biggest updates is that SAVE borrowers have started to receive their official 90-day notices requiring them to switch repayment plans. And those notices are being sent on a rolling basis every 2 weeks, so not everyone will receive them at the same time. The earliest deadlines are in late September, so many borrowers will have deadlines that are later, perhaps in October, November, or even December, potentially. One important point here is that the generic "you have options" emails that the Department of Education sent out, those are not the same thing as the actual transition notice. The real deadline comes from your loan servicer, and it will show your actual deadline. When you receive it, save it, put the deadline on your calendar, but don't wait until then to figure out what's next. One thing I really want to emphasize is that a lot of borrowers feel like they have to make a massive student loan decision immediately. In many cases, that's simply not true. So there's a lot changing right now. Slowing down to think carefully through your options is completely reasonable. The SAVE forbearance has been already going on for about 2 years. And many of you have been biding your time during that process. You don't need to suddenly make a rush decision right now. I want you to make sure you're making an informed decision. So run the numbers in a student loan calculator or schedule a consult with us at Vet Debt Experts. If you're in need of some clarity on your next steps, that's what we do. We're here to help. Importantly, switching off of SAVE, it does not erase your existing forgiveness progress. So that's one of the questions that we're seeing often. So your previous payments on an income-driven plan, they will count toward whatever plan you transition to next, whether that's the pay plan, IBR, or the RAP plan. One of the biggest areas of confusion with student loans right now is RAP. It's called the RAP plan, the RAP plan, the new repayment assistance plan. It's now available on the IDR application. And we're seeing some borrowers just assume that RAP is basically the replacement for SAVE, and therefore the plan everyone should automatically use, and that is definitely not the case. For some borrowers, RAP may make sense, but for many borrowers, especially if you're eligible for the new version of IBR, RAP may actually be a significantly worse long-term option. So generally speaking, new IBR applies to borrowers whose first federal student loans were taken out after July 2014. RAP extends the forgiveness timeline to 30 years, while the new IBR plan offers forgiveness after 20 years. So for some borrowers, switching to RAP could potentially add another decade before you would get forgiveness. So it's really important to know what you're looking at if you're considering switching to this new RAP plan or RAP plan. And in many situations, RAP can result in higher monthly payments, certainly higher total repayment costs over time because of the longer timeline, but not for everyone. For borrowers who are eligible for the old version of IBR, those who borrowed before July 2014, the analysis is definitely more nuanced because you really need to compare the monthly payment differences and the long-term tax bond projections to see which option actually makes more sense. And remember, the old version of IBR, it's a 25-year plan versus the WRAP plan is going to be a 30-year timeline. So it's important to look at, okay, does it make sense to potentially have a lower payment for those folks on the RAP plan, but then have to pay 5 additional years? So we really have to run the calculations to see what's going to make more sense for them. Another important detail is that the RAP plan, so WRAP's got that interest subsidy. It's got really strict requirements. It requires on-time payments to qualify. You actually have to have unpaid interest to be able to take advantage of that interest subsidy. That's another thing to keep in mind with that new plan. Another major thing we're seeing right now is a huge number of processing errors and IDR application issues. Honestly, some of this is exactly what you would expect during a massive repayment plan transition, like what is happening right now with the Department of Education. This transition involves millions of borrowers. It's an estimated 7 million borrowers just on the SAVE plan. I'll go through what we've seen lately. So what we've seen is incorrect monthly payment estimates on the application. Some borrowers were actually being shown unrealistically low IBR payments, so sometimes around $50 a month, regardless of what their income was. So I've seen cases where somebody's payment should be $1,000 a month, but the application was showing $50 a month. So really dramatic stuff here. We're seeing missing repayment plan options. So for some people, pay is not showing up for them on the application, even though they are eligible for the pay plan, or even people who are on the pay plan trying to recertify their income and not seeing pay as an option. And it's like, okay, but they're already on it. So just some crazy stuff there. Strange warnings related to the IBR plan. So we've seen people on IBR get a warning that they're leaving the IBR plan when they're going to just recertify and they're choosing IBR on the application. So it's like, okay, I'm already on IBR and I'm recertifying on IBR, but I'm getting this pop-up saying I'm leaving the IBR plan. So that's another weird thing. Incorrect calculations for married borrowers. In households where, for example, both spouses have loans and they are married filing jointly. So this is specifically affecting folks who are married filing jointly more often than the separately folks. Sometimes the payment for one spouse is being calculated based on the total household income instead of being split like it's supposed to be. And just a lot of confusing and inconsistent communication from the loan servicers overall. So a lot of notifications that people are getting confused about. We're also seeing borrowers recertify and initially receive a letter showing the payment they were expecting, but then later receiving another letter saying, oh, no, you owe something higher now. It's like $3,000 a month, for example. We're also seeing some borrowers switch off of the SAVE plan, initially receive a letter showing the payment they expected, and then later receiving another letter saying, oh no, it's higher, it's this other payment. The good news is that many of these issues appear to be correctable by submitting a new IDR application. If you're affected by any of these issues, you can go to studentaid.gov/IDR and submit a new application, or submit an updated application, I should say. You're always going to want to scroll down to returning IDR borrowers and go through that second section on that page. If something on your application or a letter from your servicer just looks wildly wrong, trust your instincts. Double check it before making any sort of major decision about your loans. We're also seeing lots of people who are using the simulator on studentaid.gov, and they're confused by what they're seeing there because it's really buggy. The Venn Foundation Student Loan Repayment Simulator is a lot more accurate, so you could check that out. Or if you're scheduling a student loan consult with us, we can just run your numbers using our tools during your consult. One quick note for any new grads who are listening, because this is something we're consistently seeing over the past few years. So if you graduated in May 2026, I recommend not applying for an income-driven repayment plan right now. Every year around November or December, we hear from new grads who are just heartbroken because they thought they were doing the right thing by signing up for a repayment plan early after graduation. And then months later, what happens is they receive a huge bill because it turns out only some of their loans were placed into an income-driven plan, and the rest of them stayed on the standard plan because those loans weren't actually available to enroll in any sort of plan because they were on the grace period. And then they have to reapply for an income-driven plan, and they could have just waited and saved themselves a ton of stress. I recommend if you're a new grad, wait until 30 to 60 days before the end of your 6-month grace period before applying for an income-driven repayment plan. That way you can save yourself all of that stress. Just note that if you log into your loan servicer's website right now and you're a new grad and you see that the standard plan is listed there, that's the default plan and that's what's going to show up while you're on the grace period. So that's completely normal. Okay, getting back to things that are relevant to the broader audience here, another confusing thing that some borrowers are seeing right now is some SAVE borrowers are logging into their loan servicer portals and they're seeing dates like years into the future. So sometimes even 2028, and it's saying, hey, you don't have a payment until then, or you don't have to recertify until then. And that's not true. That date is basically a placeholder that the loan servicers put there during the SAVE court actions when they weren't sure when the SAVE court actions would end, and they weren't sure when the SAVE plan would end. And I'm worried some borrowers are going to log in and see that 2028 date and assume that they don't need to pay attention to their loans right now. And they really do. So they need to keep an eye out for that 90-day deadline as far as when they should make sure that they transition off of SAVE. It's going to arrive this year in the next few months, and it's going to contain your actual deadline to switch plans, and you will have to recertify when you switch plans. So it's important to know that. Overall, my biggest message right now is this: do not panic. Do not assume everyone should switch to the wrap plan. Do not assume every payment estimate you see online is correct. And don't feel pressured to make a rush decision just because there's a lot of noise online right now. This is a complicated time, and thoughtful decision making will set you up for a smoother transition, whether that's to a new repayment plan or an updated payment after recertifying, or both. If all of this feels confusing right now, you're definitely not alone. Helping veterinarians navigate these kinds of student loan decisions is exactly what we do at Vet Debt Experts. And one final quick update before we wrap up. Vet Debt Experts officially has a website now, which we're excited about. We still have a few tweaks to make to it, but it is live. You can visit vetdebtexperts.com to learn more or schedule a student loan consult with us. And until next time, take care and continue your path to financial success. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered individualized financial advice. If a specific investment is mentioned, it should not be considered a recommendation or endorsement to buy or sell the investment. All investments involve risk. Past performance does not guarantee future results. You are encouraged to seek the advice of a financial professional before implementing any investment strategies discussed. Yay, compliance.